All right, so 11.2 is all going to be about volume. I know it says prisms and cylinders, but we're going to be learning prisms, cylinders, cones, pyramids, and spheres. Okay? On your reference sheet, I want you guys to look at that reference sheet that's in front of you. You should see 3 formulas that say V equals something. We're going to learn all 3 of those formulas today. All right? So once you see them, I will, at the end, be able to show you how to remember them on your reference sheet. So volume is just the number of cubes that can fit inside of a figure. All right, so what we're going to be doing today is figuring out the volume of a figure. Area was how much space you had around the figure. Volume is going to be how much space the figure takes up inside. So your first formulas that you're going to see are your volume of prism formulas. The volume of a prism formula is volume equals big B times H. Okay, where big B means the area of the base. So that's why it's a capital B, because it doesn't just mean base, it means the area of the base. Okay, depending on what shape your base is, you have to find the area. If you have a rectangular prism, you guys can use length times width times height, okay, which is the same thing as area of the base times the height. Because the area of your base would be length times width, so there's your big B, and then you multiply it by the height. In a cube, you can just take side squared. So you take any side length that you have and cube it. I mean, not squared, cubed. So volume of a cube would be side cubed. Okay. Next we have little b, which means the length of a base edge. Okay, so that's going to be something that you need to remember for your area of the base. Now the volume of a cylinder has the same exact formula. Volume equals big B times H. But what we can do is we know the area of the base is always going to be a circle, right? A cylinder is going to always have a circle as a base. So I can just replace that big B with the area formula of a circle, which is pi r squared H. Okay? Today we're going to start with your volume formulas from what you see on your reference sheet, and then we will adapt them to whatever shape we have. Okay? So this is the first formula on your reference sheet. So that first formula has 2 bases. Okay? The next formula you will see is the volume for pyramids. So that is 1/3 big B times H. Okay? So it's still big B means area of the base, and then H means the height. So it's 1/3 the area of your base times your height. Cones, still same formula, but we just replace big B but with pi r squared. So that's your second formula that they give you, and that has 1 base. Okay, so first formula has 2 bases, second formula has 1 base, and then the last thing we're going to see is the volume for a sphere. This is 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay, so they give you that one, just how it is, 4/3 pi r cubed. So the way that you remember which ones to use on your reference sheet is 2, 1, 0, meaning the top one is going to have 2 bases on your reference sheet, your blue reference sheet. The top one's going to have 2 bases, the middle one's going to have 1 base, and the last one's going to have no bases. Okay, so that's going to help you remember these formulas. Questions about the formulas right now? So let's go ahead and start solving. So we want to find the volume of each prism and round to the nearest tenth if necessary. How many bases do I have in this one? How many bases do I have in my figure? I have 2 bases. It's a prism. That means I'm going to use that first formula, which is volume equals big B times H. Okay? So big B is the area of my base. What shape is the base of my prism? A rectangle. So big B is length times width. So that's going to be 10 times 12, which gives me 120. And then what's the height of my 3-dimensional figure? 8. This is the height right here. The height of my 3-dimensional figure is 8, so H equals 8. So I have big B is 120, I have 8 is H, now I plug it in. My volume is equal to 120 times 8, which gives me my volume is equal to 960, and then it's units, which is centimeters cubed. So volume is cubed. Area was squared, volume is cubed. Anybody confused on what I just did there? Really, all you have to do in these problems is find the area of your base and the height of your figure, multiply it all together. So let's do it again over here. So how many bases do I have in this figure? How many bases do I have? You will never have 3. You either have 1, 2, or none. Okay, I have 2. Guys, a pyramid is the only shape that has 1. There are obviously 2 bases here. This right here is a base, and this right here is a base. Okay? This is a triangular prism. If you don't know that by now, you need to start studying that. So, the volume formula for a 2-base figure is volume equals big B times H. So I need my big B, which is the area of the base, and I need the height of my 3-dimensional figure. Okay, what shape is my base? A triangle. So I need the area formula for a triangle for big B, which is 1/2 base times height. So what is the base of my triangle? 9. And what is the height of my triangle? 15. Okay, I'm looking at this triangle right here. The base is 9, the height is 15. So that means when I plug it into my calculator, you do 15 times 9 times 1/2, and you get 67.5. Okay, so there is my base. Now I need the height of my 3-dimensional figure. What is the height of my 3-dimensional figure? 12. Remember, the height connects your 2 bases. Okay, so if all this information was my base information, then this has to be the height of my 3-dimensional figure, because it connects the 2 bases. That means my height is 12, so now we plug it in. Volume is equal to 67.5 times 12, and when you multiply that out, you get 810 yards cubed. Anybody have questions so far? All I'm doing is finding the area of my base, so you still need all those area formulas from chapter 10. Okay, so I need the area of my base times the height of my 3-dimensional figure. The easiest way to figure out what the height of your 3-dimensional figure is to figure out which length you didn't use in the area of your base. Okay, because in your base, you're not going to have the height of the 3-dimensional figure. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Hopefully. Okay, let's do the next one. So the next one, it says find the volume of my figure. Okay, how many bases do I have in this figure? 2. I have the circle on the top and the circle on the bottom. 2 bases. Okay, so my volume formula for 2 bases is volume equals big B times H. So I need the area of my base and I need the height of my 3-dimensional figure. What shape is my base? A circle. And the area formula for a circle is pi r squared. So we are going to plug in our radius squared. So big B is going to be pi times my radius of 8 squared. And that is going to give you 64 pi for the area of my base. Anybody confused? Yes. What don't you understand? What is the area formula for a circle? Yep. So my base is a circle. What does big B stand for? No. What does big B stand for? Area of the base. Okay. What shape is my base? A circle. And what did you say the area formula for a circle is? So that's why I'm using pi r squared. Because that's the area formula for my base. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just like back here, we use the area formula for my base of a triangle. Okay. All right. So the area of my base is 64 pi. Now what is the height of my cylinder? What is the height of my cylinder? 12. Good. Okay. So they want us to leave our answer in terms of pi and rounded to the nearest tenth. So we're going to have two different answers. So my volume is equal to big B, which is 64 pi, times my height of 12. When you are leaving it in terms of pi, think about pi as a variable. Okay, so you're only going to multiply the 64 and the 12 to get that your area in terms of pi is 768 pi centimeters cubed. Then to get rid of the pi, you have to take that 768 and multiply it by pi and then round to the nearest tenth. Use the pi button. It is 2 down from the green button. Do not use 3.14. So in your calculator, you need to do 768 times the pi button equals, and you should get 2,412.743. So when you round to the nearest tenth, it's just 0.7 centimeters cubed. So there's your two answers. A lot of times they're going to ask for your answers in terms of pi and rounded to the nearest tenth, so you need to write both of them. Have I confused anybody yet? Anybody need help figuring out how to put this into their calculators? Yep. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a composite figure. Okay, so just like when we did composite figures with area, we're going to find the volume of our first figure and add or subtract it to the volume of our second figure. Okay, well I'm going to look at this middle one first. How many bases does this middle shape have? Or what would you call that middle figure? A rectangular prism. So we're going to take the volume of my prism, and prisms by definition have two bases, and we're going to add it to. Now what shape is this over here? Half cylinder, and then this is also a half cylinder. But together, do they have the same radius? Yes. They're both 2. So together there is one whole cylinder. Okay, so instead of adding 2 half cylinders, we're going to add a whole cylinder. Alright, so for my volume formulas, a prism has 2 bases, so we use the volume of big B times H, plus a cylinder has 2 bases. They are circles, so that is also big B times H. Okay, the only difference between the two is their big B's are different shapes. One's a rectangle, one's a circle. So let's go ahead and plug that in. So let's find big B of our prism. Since it's a rectangle, it's base times height. So big B for my prism is going to be, what is the base of my rectangular prism? 12. And then the height of my rectangular prism is, or of my rectangle is 4, because this length up here is 4, which means this length down here is 4. So the height of my rectangle is 4. So big B of my prism is 48. So I have 48 for the base of my prism. And then the height of my rectangular prism is right here, this 4. So I multiply that by 4. So there's big B and H. Plus, now we need big B of my cylinder. So that is going to be pi r squared because the base is a circle. So what is the radius of my circle? So if I put that whole circle together, what would the radius be? If I put this whole thing together, what's the radius? The diameter is 4 because this whole thing would be 4. So what's the radius? 2. So for big B of my cylinder, I have pi, my radius of 2, squared. So I plug that in up here, pi times 2 squared. And then what is the height of my cylinder? What's the height of my cylinder, guys? 4. Alright, so I did big B of my prism over here, which is 12 times 4, gives me 48. And then my circle has a radius of 2, so that's 2 squared pi. Anybody confused on what I'm doing? Okay, we are rounding to the nearest tenth, so when I solve over here, I need to multiply by pi. So 48 times 4 is going to give me 192 for the volume of my prism. Then we need to add it to 2 squared times 4 times pi. Okay, so that's going to be how you put it in your calculator. 2 squared times 4 times pi. And we're rounding to the nearest tenth, so that gives you 50.265. So when you round, you get 50.3 for the volume of the cylinder. Then you just add that to your 192, and you get the volume of the whole thing. The volume of my total figure is equal to 242.3 feet cubed. That's going to be the hardest thing we have to do, is find volume of two things and add them together. Are we confused about what I just did? Alright, so now let's move on and let's look at the next example. So I want to find the volume of this figure. Okay, how many bases does this figure have? How many bases does this figure have? You weren't here on Friday, so I would... How many bases do I have here, guys? 1. What shape is it? A square pyramid. Pyramids, by definition, have only one base. Here is your base down here. Okay? So, because it has one base, use the volume formula with one base. That volume formula is volume equals 1/3 big B times H. Okay? So, I still need a big B and I still need H. So we know our shape of our base is a square, so that's base times height, so that's 4 times 4, which gives me the area of my base is 16. So big B is 16. What is the height of my pyramid? 6. So I plug that in. Volume is equal to 1/3, 16 times 6. Instead of making it 1/3, the easiest way to do this is to do 16 times 6, then divide by 3. Okay? So 16 times 6 divided by 3 gives us what in our calculator? 16 times 6 divided by 3. Gives me 32. inches cubed. All right, so again, if you have two bases, you use the volume equals big B times H. When you have one base, you use 1/3 big B times H. All right, so for this shape, how many bases do I have? 1. Okay, it again is a pyramid. Pyramids only have one base. Okay, and my base is this trapezoid. I'll give you a hint. In a pyramid, your base is opposite of the pointy piece of your pyramid. Okay? So, since I have one base, my volume formula is 1/3 big B times H. So I still need big B, and I still need an H. Does anybody remember the formula for the area of a trapezoid? Good. Base 1 plus base 2 times height divided by 2. Okay, so I look at my figure. Base 1 is 9 plus base 2 is 18 times the height of my trapezoid, which is 6, all divided by 2. Because of PEMDAS, you have to do 9 plus 18 first. Multiply it by 6, divide by 2. And when you do, you get 81 for the area of the base. Did anybody not get 81? All right, so I have big B. What is the height of my pyramid? 10. Okay, because it connects the base to my pointy part, which is this line right here, 10. Pointy part is called a vertex, but some of you guys do not remember that. So, when I plug this in, volume is equal to 1/3, 81 times 10. So I would do 81 times 10 first, then take that and divide it by 3, and you get that your volume is 270 meters cubed. Bless you. So guys, the hardest part about all this is figuring out which volume formula to use, and then finding the area of the base. Okay? So remember, if it has two bases, it doesn't come to a point at the top. That means it has two bases. That's a prism. Volume equals big B times H. If it is a pyramid, aka it comes to a point at the top or bottom, that is a pyramid. So that's volume equals 1/3 base times height. Alright. So let's look at this one. We want to find the volume of this cone. How many bases does this cone have? One base. Okay, so I use the one base formula, which is volume equals 1/3 big B times H. So I need the area of my base, and I need the height of my figure. Okay, what shape is the base? A circle. And what's the area formula for a circle? Pi r squared. Good job, guys. So I have pi. What is my radius of my base? The radius of my base. 9. The diameter, the whole thing, is 18. So remember, your radius is half of the diameter. So that means my radius equals 9. So I have pi times 9 squared. And when you multiply that out, you get 81 pi. Okay? We're leaving it in terms of pi and rounding. So our first answer is going to have pi in it. Our second one we're going to find as a decimal. Okay? So there's the area of my base. What's the height of my cone? 8. So my volume formula is going to be 81 pi times 8. So when I write this in terms of pi, you just multiply the 81 and the 8, and you get 648. Oh wait, divided by 3. Sorry guys, I forgot the 1/3 up here. So you do 81 times 8 divided by 3, which gives you 216 pi meters cubed. And then what you need to do is you need to take that 216, multiply it by pi, and press equals. Round to the nearest tenth, you get 678.6 meters cubed. Is anybody having trouble putting this stuff in their calculators? Okay, any questions so far? Alright, so we've seen 2 bases, 1 base. Now let's do one where we have no bases. Okay, because remember, bases are flat surfaces on your figure. This has no flat surface. It is round all the way in the picture. So that means it has no bases. So this is what we call a sphere. So the volume formula for no bases is 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay, spheres are always going to have this formula. So all the information you need in a sphere is your radius. Okay, so what is the radius of my sphere? 9. So we go ahead and plug that in. So volume equals 4/3 pi 9 cubed. Now, I want everybody to look at their calculators. There's a cubed button on your calculator. What you need to do is you press 9, the second button, and then the number 1. Notice the little green X cubed over the number 1. That's how you cube a number. So when you do, you get your volume is equal to 4/3 pi 9 cubed is 729. Now listen to how I multiply by 4/3. You're going to multiply by the numerator of 4, then divide by 3. So you take 729 times 4 equals, that should give you 2,916. Take that and divide by 3, and you get your volume in terms of pi is 972 pi centimeters cubed. I know it says to just give your answer in terms of pi, but I'm also going to multiply the pi through. So take 972 times pi button equals, and you get 3,053.6 centimeters cubed. Okay, so again, on your reference sheet, the first volume formula has 2 bases. The second volume formula has 1 base. The third volume formula has no bases. 2, 1, 0. Any questions before you guys get started on your homework? Okay, for your homework, you need to show me all your work. You need to show me the formula for the volume. You need to show me your work to find the area of the base. Okay, if I don't see all this work, you will not get full credit for your homework. Go ahead and get started.